Helldivers 2 has been out for 5 months going on 6 months, so it's time to do a current state of the game. What is the game like, where is it going, and how is it doing? And I'm doing this specifically because there's been a large amount of targeted negativity towards Helldivers 2. So let's talk about the negativity, the positivity, everything going on with the game and say, is it worth it to play right now? Where is it going? Is that going to be good? And is the game where we want it to be? The first thing I want to address is this doomsaying we're seeing right now, saying the game has lost 99% of its player base. The player base is failing. There's no one playing the game anymore. Servers are empty. And like all clickbait, there's a small amount of truth to it, but not really. Like, yes, the game had a peak player base of like 450,000 on Steam at some point. Probably even higher if you count in PlayStation and all that. But using the peak player base for when the game is the most popular isn't really a good metric to tell if people are still playing the game, and it's certainly not worth doomsaying the game is dead. Peak player base on Steam is still around 30,000 to 40,000. And again, those numbers don't include PlayStation players, which there is a great deal of. To put it in perspective, if you were to look at Warzone, Baldur's Gate, PUBG, even Dota 2, to a lesser extent granted, all have the same experience. They have a huge spike in player base when the game was super popular, and then it peters down to its core player base who still enjoy the game. So I really don't think there's any need to worry about all the memes you see about losing 99% of the player base. This is normal, this is to be expected, and realistically it won't be a problem as long as the game continues to fix bugs, work on itself, and put out content. Will keep the players here who enjoy the game. Now, that isn't to say there isn't some flaws, and I do, like I said, want to talk about both the positivity and the negativity in the state of the game right now. The big negative for me and a lot of the players is that the game still has bugs that it's had since launch. There's still reinforcement bugs. Some of the scopes still don't work. And while some of the bugs are annoying and other bugs are game-breaking, like you have to leave the game because you can't even play, it's still annoying that both are in the game, although some are more important than others. And with every patch they put out, we're getting more bugs. Yes, they fix some of them, but it's one of those we take 1 step forward and 3 steps backwards. When they introduced the new nuke mission, I was unable to do that mission at all because every single time it bugged out for me. That was really annoying. When they finally fixed the spear, one of my favorite weapons, it immediately had a game-breaking bug that was causing everyone to crash, and they had to say, hey, stop taking the spear because it's broken again. Now, they do have a fix in plan for all of this. And that is they have been toying around with the idea of a test server so they can test it somewhere, have some players live test it and point out the bugs to them so they can fix them before it happens. So the future state of the game is looking good, but as it is now, there still are game-breaking bugs, and every patch is introducing new bugs, and that is annoying. Now for a positive state of the game. I feel like they have made good on their promise to stop over-nerfing things and instead buff other guns up to the level of those meta must-pick weapons. When the game launched, pretty much everyone agreed you had to bring a railgun, a 500 kg, and a personal shield. And now we have a much more diverse meta. We see people bringing Gatling Sentry, Autocannon Sentry, Rocket Sentry. We see Napalm Eagles, Airburst Strike, Precision Strikes, and plenty of Spear users finally now that it works. So I think as far as like meta balancing goes, they found a good balance between nerfing some of the overpowered things but bringing everything else up to a strong level. Are things perfect? No, there's still some guns and weapons I would consider worthless. Like if I had a teammate drop with a blitzer, smoke grenades, both smoke screen stratagems, a mortar, and the AR drone, I would be a little upset by that. Like I would feel like they're trolling and intentionally making the game harder. Now, usually you do positivity, negativity, positivity, negativity. I'm going to put that to the side and talk about another huge positive, which is the samples. They put samples in level 6 for the super samples for people who didn't feel comfortable going into the higher difficulties. That's an absolute win for casuals, and I think an absolutely wonderful change overall for the game. So huge positivity. I want it to be its own positive thing outside of the positive-negative sandwich. Back to the negatives. And this is going to be a weird negative for this kind of game, and that is the content is slowing down. Now hear me out for why I'm putting that in the negative container. Games like this are meant to be repetitive, like looter shooters. You go in, you do the mission, you get your loot, you leave. And for many people, that's a satisfying game loop, so it's not really a negative if there's more content or less. They're not going to enjoy it any more or less because they enjoy the core gameplay loop. But because of the way the gaming industry is now, there are people who feel like they always have to be achieving something towards like a battle pass, gaining experience, doing a prestige system. They need some end goal to grind towards. And without that end goal, without that endless treadmill, without there being something new being added every single week or every single month, there are some players who are going to drop the game and not want to play it. Again, that's not everyone, but I do feel like that is something worth bringing up as a negative. I will tack on to that it is not always a negative though, because the whole reason they slowed down their content is because they wanted to bring out more patches and fix some bugs as the community asked for. So I consider it more of a neutral thing. We will lose some players to it, but a lot of players hopefully will stick around or will gain some people back as those game-breaking bugs are fixed and people can enjoy the game for what it is. Let's take a break from positive and negative to address another criticism that's been coming up a lot of the game that I feel is untruthful, unfair, or unjustified. There have been a ton of news articles coming out lately talking about the greater war effort. And they've been having headlines like, players are upset that they're not actually impacting the war front. Or, the Galactic War is no fun because I can't make a difference. Or, the Galactic War is boring because it's just the same missions over and over again. So here's the thing. I understand everyone wants every mission to be like the Meridia one. You know, where we got to turn a planet into a black hole. Or the TCS towers, where we got to eliminate an entire planet. Those are cool and impactful, and it feels like it's making a large impact on the story overall, especially when we went back and revisited those TCS towers because it caused mutations and problems. That was really cool. Here's the thing about being an effective and good storyteller. If you think of your favorite TV season, not a series overall, but just like your favorite season, I bet you 10 to 1, there's a few episodes in there that you like a lot less than the other episodes. There's ups and downs. There's episodes that are objectively boring, but are absolutely necessary for the overarching story. And because of those boring or dull moments, those episodes you like a little bit less, the payoff when you get to the finale is so much greater. That's what some of these filler missions are. If every mission is black holing a planet, we would run out of planets in a few months. Or consider how after just 1 or 2 months, we defeated the bots, we wiped them off the map, they were gone. If we just continued at that pace, we would run out of enemies. The game would be beat, it would be done, it'd be kaput. So we have to have boring, basic orders. We have to have losses. We have to have things that you may not like because as an overall overarching story, it's important to the larger picture, even if it's not great in the short picture. I'd also like to point out that at 6 months almost into the game, the developers haven't broken their promises to keep content always available, to be able to unlock it at your own pace, to avoid a pay-to-win situation. And I'm sure we can all think of a few examples of developers who've made big promises and then within a few months of success go back on those promises or introduce something that completely goes against those promises or principles. So it's great to say that we're half a year in and they're still going strong on those thoughts. Back to positive and negative. Let's talk about the PSN fiasco. Even though that is old history and out of our minds now, we're still seeing far-reaching implications today. People who left the game who didn't come back, or people who are unable to come back because the game is still not available in their country. We lost a lot of good players, and I don't think they're coming back. Even if the game became available in their country, I think a few people at the very least have had that trust broken so bad that they're not willing to give it another try. And as a positive, maybe, to this as I'm talking about negatives, there's only one other negative I can think of for the entire game right now, which is great that there's only 3 real negatives in the state of the game. So let's just cover that one really quick. They have not introduced a new difficulty yet. Those of you who were here for the original game know that there were, 15 levels of difficulty in the original one? And people have been asking and asking and asking for more difficulty because, well, let's face it, if you play the game too much, it's a little too easy right now. Now, I'm going to say this as someone who has almost zero experience in making games and programming. I took 1 semester of C++ and absolutely hated it. I don't feel like adding another difficulty would take that much work for them to do. Increasing enemy spawns, even if it was completely unfair, they could at least slap a warning on there and say, hey, this is difficulty level 10. It's meant to be unwinnable. So if you really want it, here you go. Good luck. I really feel like we needed another difficulty at this point, and I'm bummed that we haven't gotten it. If you've made it this far in the video, I'll take this time to plug that I do have a video on getting better, so if you're stuck at difficulty 5, 6, or 7 and want to improve, check out those videos. Also, don't forget like, subscribe, all that stuff that I hate to say, but hey, I have to. Back to the positives. While I don't think the game is going to win Game of the Year, I think there were too many game-breaking bugs, and between the PSN fiasco and people leaving the game because of those bugs, I don't think it's going to win Game of the Year. But I do think that it is primed to be a juggernaut in the gaming world for at least the next year. And by Christmas time, when people get PS5s, when they get new PCs, the game should be old enough that we'll see a big sale. And that big sale is going to bring in a lot of fresh blood that we can hopefully keep, because there'll be a lot of content by then for people to enjoy. Something I did find concerning while I was doing research for this video, on YouTube, it often tells you what people are searching for so you know what to make videos about. And one of the things it said people are searching for is Helldivers 3. Now, there are some unpopular books, as far as I know, also called Helldivers, so maybe it was just that, but it seems like people have already started writing off Helldivers 2 and are looking for Helldivers 3 to come out. And maybe that's just my audience, maybe it was a fluke, but I think it speaks to how I said people lost trust in Helldivers 2, and I think some people are just like, okay, well, I'll just wait for the next one. When does the next one come out? And with certain games like Call of Duty having a yearly release, I don't think it's necessarily their fault to think, okay, well, I missed out on this game, or I don't like this one anymore because of these things that happened. We're at the 6-month mark. Will the next game come out in 1 year and I can just jump right back in then? However, the devs have stated multiple times that they want this war to be ongoing and one giant war that's going to last for a while. And earlier we talked about how the devs have not gone back on their promises, and I think they're going to stick with that for a while. So I think we're going to keep this game for at least a year, maybe 2, maybe even more. Unfortunately, I don't think Helldivers 3 will be as easy to get. I do want one eventually. I love the game, and I'd love to see the next iteration. However, Helldivers 2 was built on some pretty shaky code. So if they're going to make a number 3, hopefully they'll grab a new engine, but that again means making the game from the ground up in a new engine, which means more time, more devs, new people involved to try and program on said new engine, and it's just a far ways away. So if you're one of those people who's like, well, I missed out on launch, or I was unhappy with the PSN thing, so I'll just wait for number 3, I think you're going to be waiting a long time to get Helldivers 3. So let's sum everything up. There are still some negatives. There's some game-breaking bugs that are still existing in the game. There's a little bit less content coming out. But there's a lot of positives, and honestly, the biggest positive, I say this in a lot of game reviews because it's true, if it's fun, almost nothing else matters, right? If you're having fun, that's the only point of a game, is to have fun. And Helldivers 2 is still fun. So at 5 months going on 6 months, the state of the game is, it still has some bugs, it still has a little ways to go, but it is an absolute riot to play. It's a blast with a squad, and it is in a great state and will only continue to improve over the next year. So if you're on the fence about it, get it. If you haven't come back in a while, come try some of the new stuff. There's plenty of new stuff to experience, especially if you quit early on. They fixed a bunch of stuff and you can play with all new toys. There's no reason not to give it a try, especially since it's not a full price game. And like I said, we should see some big sales coming up in the holiday season. Thank you so much for watching, and have a blessed day.